Should foundations be bailing out Detroit? Plus, the uproar over Obamacare has some Michigan lawmakers looking for insurance companies to explain their prices. Also, next year's elections will bring millions of dollars to Michigan. And the worst politician of the week. It's coming up right now on MiWeek.
Michigan's turnaround is being powered by things we do better than anywhere else in the world. Today's global leaders routinely turn to Michigan to work on their most difficult problems. That's because the engineering talent in this part of the world is simply the best. So many possibilities lie ahead for Michigan's future. These opportunities are here and starting to happen. The vision for the new Michigan. Share it, talk it up, drive it home. Funding is also provided by Delta.
Welcome to MiWeek. We are glad that you're joining us. I'm Christy McDonald. We're coming to you from our Midtown studios in Detroit this week, where the question of public safety and what is being done to address violent crimes is of major concern. Plus, we'll talk more about potential plans for foundations to step in with millions of dollars for Detroit and Mike Duggan's plans for his first year as mayor. Also coming up, speaking of millions, Ad Money promises to be big in 2014. Plus, we have some new poll numbers in the governor's race. But we start first tonight with more fallout from the Affordable Care Act. Here in Michigan, some lawmakers have floated a bill that would make insurance companies explain exactly what price hikes are attributed to Obamacare. So let's get started with our contributors this week, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you, and we're downtown this week.
This week, yes, excellent.
All right, so let's wade right into it. I'm always afraid to throw the grenade into healthcare with the two of you. But let's start this week talking about what Michigan lawmakers are talking about, making insurance companies, when they send out their notes about their rates, making them explain if some of those rates, the rate hikes, are due to changes in the Affordable Care Act.
Well, it's just a silliness. I mean, of course, the rate hikes are involved with the Affordable Care Act. If you mandate more coverage, put more sick people on the insurance rolls, insurance rates are going to go up. It was foolish for anybody to believe otherwise. These lawmakers ought to be telling us, what's going into making our taxes so high. They should take care of their business.
Itemize the taxes.
Okay, well,
our pork this much. I mean, this is just grandstanding silliness.
Oh, so they shouldn't have to spell it out?
No, they should be accountable to their customers and not to a bunch of meddlesome lawmakers who are just going to mandate more paperwork and more costs.
And
in the
that'll
process.
drive up. Part of the cost increase now will be we have to itemize. We have to itemize.
Yeah, how
all our
about
costs.
this? Mandates put on by state legislature over the years that have added to insurance costs as well.
So
they play a role in this.
Is this just political then?
Well, it is. But I mean, there's a good point here, which is that everybody is blaming everything on health reform, and some of this stuff is not about health reform.
Which part?
Well, go back. Go back several years with our own health insurance, Nolan. Premiums go up every year, an average of 15%.
No, 5% a year.
Okay, you say 5, I say 15. We'll split the difference.
All right,
at 10.
tomato, go.
But my point is that costs were going up anyway because there were too many uninsured people in the system. There were too many uncovered costs. The whole idea of reform is to get more people insured so that you lower those costs over time.
And I would agree with you, Steve, that costs were going up.
Yeah.
And that's why, from the beginning, we should have addressed costs instead of addressing excess without costs. So you added more people to the same inefficient, costly system, and that's why your bill's getting to be so stinking high. I mean, again, you look at these deductibles and premiums. We've been talking a lot about the individual policies.
Sure.
You buy your own policy. But the people who have employer-provided health care, it's no picnic for them either. No. I mean, their premiums, their deductibles are going through the roof. And
it depends on the employer, of course, because a lot of employers, again, my wife who works for a museum, her coverage isn't really changing at all. There aren't price hikes, but they aren't being hit by the same taxes that our employer, for example.
Eventually it's going to go up, and the people covered under union contracts aren't seeing the hit yet. But they will when their contracts expire.
Obviously,
and they have to be renegotiated.
There's big problems with the implementation of the entire Affordable Care Act, and the president is suffering for it. Just this week, approval numbers came out. He's at 37% approval rating, and also looking at the number of people who support Obamacare is now at 31%. What are we seeing happen here, Nolan?
Well, we're seeing a revolt. People are starting to realize what's happened to them. And, I think there was never a majority support for this law. At best, it got to about 50-50, and that was only for a brief period. People have always been opposed to the law, but now that they see the impact, I think that you're seeing that escalate and intensify. And you saw the president last week try to mitigate with this, we're going to delay or you can keep your policies you had or whatever. They can't keep the policies they had. That's water under the bridge. He's just now going to make it even more costly and confusing with what he did last week. I think they need to stop right here, get in a room, bring the insurance companies, employers, Republicans, Democrats, and come up with a plan that addresses cost and provides perhaps tax credits for people to buy their own insurance and get out from under
The
this.
tax credit thing that's a good idea, and where were Republicans 4 or 5 years ago when we were talking about this?
Screaming about
They were
that.
not talking about
That
this.
was
They were
their
screaming
plan.
about the public option, which again would have been a great idea as opposed to the mandate. I mean, the problem with this from the beginning was that it wasn't ever about fixing healthcare or not fixing healthcare. It was about stopping a president that they didn't like, and so they didn't
And
bargain in
pushing
good
to
faith.
a liberal agenda.
Well,
right,
fine,
but
but
let me-
but he won the election.
Let me
So-
ask you this, but can
He
you
wouldn't
at
have won
this...
it. If this had been last year, if this had impact, and they cleverly designed
But
that so
again,
the impact
if I had
comes
wings,
post-election.
I'd be an angel. It
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't think you can
It
look
doesn't
back and
matter.
say if then, because
Sure
you could put
because
in all sorts of
because
different
it was
scenarios.
designed to get the impact would fall after the election. So
But
there'd be
most of the
no
impact,
accountability.
But
My
most
question-
of the impact, the expansion of people with pre-existing conditions, that took effect before.
Oh, the good stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's the point. Is that the
No,
bill
the
is
point
full of
was-
some good things and some
and
things
a
that
lot
aren't
of bad
so great.
things, a lot of costly things, and they designed it so those things would happen after the election, so
That's just
Obama
smart
wouldn't
politics.
be accountable.
All right, let me ask you this. My question is, can you stop right now and put all of those people in a room and
You have
change
to.
and change the course? Is that a possibility, and is that the right thing to do?
I think it's what will happen because everybody is now sort of in the same boat. You got Democrats and Republicans on the Hill saying this isn't working, and we can't go into the elections next year with people feeling the effects of this way. So finally, there is enough incentive on both sides of the aisle to actually have a conversation about this. But this is not the first opportunity to have done that. Democrats tried very hard
Oh, they didn't
in
try.
2009 to include Republicans.
That's
in
revisionary.
the-
What they
it's not,
did was
because
say,
Hank?
we've got a veto-proof majority. You sign on to what we
No.
tell you to sign
What
on
they
to.
did-
If they had not had that veto-proof majority
So then why
back
is the-
then, you would have had a law that worked better because they'd have been forced
So why
to
is
take
the bill?
Republican
Why is the bill
ideas.
so full of Republican ideas? Where'd
Because
the mandate
they must
come
have
from?
been good ideas.
Where'd the mandate
They
come
must
from?
have been good
Where'd the
ideas,
exchanges
Steve.
come from?
All right, let me-
These
The
were
exchanges
all
aren't a bad idea.
They're
properly
great ideas.
executed.
They're
But
great
you
ideas.
can't. You've got to allow more flexibility.
But the
in
idea
system,
that-
and you got to address costs first, Steve.
We
All right,
agree on
Stephen,
that.
finish your point.
We agree on that, but I mean, I think the point is that Republicans were given a lot of things to get their votes. In 2009, they gave none because they were dead set on stopping the president from doing what he was elected to do. He said what he wanted to do during the campaign in 2008 was one of the first things that he did out of the box. That's it,
All right,
A lot
hang
of
on,
people
hang on,
wishing
hang on.
Now that they had stopped it.
All right, so let me ask you this in terms of looking at this politically.
Mm-hmm.
What does this do for 2014 for Democrats and for Republicans? This
Well,
single issue.
If the election were held today, it'd be a wipeout. But the election's a year
again,
away,
these are it.
and lots of.
Are people going to remember
time-
this more than they were going to remember the shutdown?
Depends on. Oh, of
In
course.
terms of
the
going
shutdown
after the
is-
Republicans
Yeah, of course.
for the shutdown and going after the Democrats
Nobody
for
can
remembers
remember the
that.
shutdown now.
Because this is pocketbook stuff. Every month you write a check, and you're writing $400, $500, $600 more. Every time you go to the doctor, and it's all of these out-of-pocket expenses, you're going to remember that. That's why I think there will be a fix. There'll have to be a fix. or
Well,
this
and
will
the
be a
question,
rout.
the real question is how do you control costs? Nobody's got a magic pill for that, which is the big driver in the system. Is that the costs just seem to go up because they go up. There aren't good reasons for it. So I'm not sure what legislative fix there is.
Well, we could have
for
invested
that.
some of this money in technology that would have helped.
Sure.
Help
The
bring
bill
down
does
costs.
that.
You could do what the Republicans asked for and didn't get: malpractice reform, so that we're not doing a lot of unnecessary treatments and tests.
We have malpractice
You could
reform in
allow
Michigan,
insurance,
though, and it's not holding costs down.
more competition, buy across the state line, a Republican idea that didn't get in the bill, and you could do these tax credits, another Republican idea that didn't get in the bill.
Well, so far they're not looking at a lot of changes, and they've got till the end of the month to make sure that even that website gets up and running. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. All right, and now to Detroit and the continuing transition of the city. Mayor-elect Mike Duggan says he wants to work on police response times, streetlights, and abandoned homes in neighborhoods the first year he is office. And we are still waiting for a ruling in bankruptcy court. And we did tape the show a little earlier this week, so if a ruling came on Thursday afternoon, we will end up talking. We will end up talking about that. But I want to start actually tonight in talking about Detroit and the violent crime initiatives that James Craig spoke about earlier this week at a town hall meeting. He's talking about moving more detectives to the neighborhood precincts and doing more of these large-scale operations that we saw last week in targeting. He targeted an apartment building where it was a known place for a lot of various crimes and did a full sweep. From what you have heard so far, Nolan, do you like what you hear?
I like anything that looks like an urgent response to this problem, because for too long we've really not responded. The city hasn't responded with the urgency a slaughter of this nature demands. We're losing a person or more a day to homicide in this city. And we had a forum last night, the Detroit News did, or earlier in the week, we had a forum with Mike Duggan, and you know, he acknowledged, he said, if we don't get crime, if we don't find an answer to this violent crime, he said nothing else matters.
Yeah, the chief did say that the numbers have gone down. So the homicide rates have gone down by 16%,
yes.
And violent crime a little bit.
Well, okay, but you got to also keep.
But numbers again sometimes aren't so comforting to people,
right? So last year we had more murders in the city of Detroit than we'd had in something like 20 years, right? So being 16% down off of that, well, I mean, I'm not trivializing, but it's still not good news. And violent crime is down overall, but what's not down, I understand, is things like shootings. And there really is no difference between a shooting and a murder in terms of the intent. I mean, these are people who intend to kill other people, and so that's your problem. You still have far too much random violence going on in the city right now. And again, perception is a big part of that. When people who live in stable areas know people who are being victims of crime and violent crime, that has a different effect than when you can say, well, it's in certain areas or it's people who are involved in certain things. So Duggan's got to get on this real quick, because once that turns and you get people saying, I won't stay in the city because I don't feel safe in what should be safe areas or relatively safe areas, the floodgates open up pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think I like what they did last week with this raid of the apartment building. They went in and rounded up a bunch of bad folks, put them on a bus and hauled them out. I think the symbolism of that was terrific, because I think they need to send a very strong message, very strong symbol that this is not a lawless community anymore. If you're a criminal, particularly if you're violent criminal, we're going to bust your head. And I don't think it's any coincidence that we saw a huge spike in homicides just after the state solved its budget problem by allowing a lot of early releases from prisoners. Many of those folks came right back to Detroit into an economy where there was no jobs and picked up where they left off.
And where they were not given the support that the state had promised them in terms of reentry. You can't just say, well, now you go back to the community. You got to give people support, and we didn't do it.
Let me ask you this. You spoke with Mike Duggan earlier this week, and again, he hasn't taken office yet, so we can't expect so much, but what kind of conversations has he been having with Chief Craig and talking about some of the crime?
Well, I don't think he's having much conversation with anyone at this point. He's still trying to figure out, and he was very candid about that in his discussion at our forum. He's still trying to figure out what role he's going to be allowed to play. And it was very apparent that it's still not clear to him if he's going to have any authority in this new job until Kevin Orr leaves. They're talking, but they haven't reached any sort of of agreement yet on that.
What are those conversations like, Steve, do you think?
Well, I think they're very tense right now because Duggan is eager to build a team, which he's got to do before, I think, January 1st.
And Kevin Orr gave him money to do that.
Well, a transition team, but he's not allowed him to hire any appointees. So we have no idea who's going to do any of these jobs that need doing in the city come January 1st. And I'm getting a little anxious as well to know that, that the democratically elected leader of the city is going to have a role in this whole process, in the bankruptcy, in the restructuring, and in the management of city government. That's super important right now, and they have not been able to figure out what the boundaries are going to be to allow that to happen.
He was really talking down expectations Tuesday night. He basically, his theme was, I'll do this, 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 and this if I'm allowed to.
If I'm allowed to.
And he really did not project any sort of optimism or confidence that he would be allowed to. I think he's in a wait and see mode. He doesn't have any guarantees at the moment.
I guess what's the timeline for something like that, though? Because wouldn't you think that some kind of decision would be made? Are they just literally, Kevin Orr's administration waiting to see how Mike Duggan reacts to certain things? Or I mean, when do you make that call?
I don't know what it is. I would have thought, and I know that Kevin Orr was anxious to have the election over and know that there was going to be a democratically elected partner, and I think he's got to be pleased with the outcome. He got the better of the two candidates. You got to start relinquishing some control. He cannot run city government, the bankruptcy, and the restructuring all by himself. It's too much. And Duggan is capable through his history of managing a lot of that stuff.
What I'm hearing, I don't know if you're hearing the same thing, is they're considering now giving him little pieces, like you can have the fire department,
Right.
but not the police department.
Right.
I'm not sure how that
That's
works.
not going to work.
And I'm not sure that's going to be satisfactory to Duggan. I don't know if that sort of power sharing arrangement will work. I think
doesn't like
he
to share
had
anything.
envisioned.
Well, but he
Pardon?
knew.
He doesn't like to share
Yeah,
anything.
but he knew
doesn't
coming
like to
in that
share
it was
it.
going to be a power sharing arrangement.
No.
Well, I think
No.
he would convinced himself that, and a lot of the conspiracists thought that they had sat down in a room and divided it all up,
Yeah.
and they were going. But I don't get a sense that they're ready to make Mike Duggan the COO, which is what we
Which is
sort
the
of
model that
anticipated.
makes sense.
Do you
Yeah.
think that they would give him a little something and then see what he does with it and how he does with it? Or do you even really have the time to do that? I mean,
I just don't think
I
that
you
makes
have
any
the time
sense.
to do that. And this little, okay, Mike, you can have these three. And as he said in his address the other night, everything is tied to another. So you can't really fix the fire department without fixing the accounting and procurement departments and the HR departments, because they're all linked. And you can't do it piecemeal. He made a very good point that just giving him one thing to fix and not all the things it's linked to won't work.
Yeah.
And there are three sort of infrastructure kind of departments that you have got to focus on: HR, IT, and the law department, right? Those three things don't function well at all in the city, and that affects everything else, right? That affects how the police can do their jobs. It affects how garbage gets picked up and things like that. You've got to allow Duggan, who I think would be very good at getting in there and trying to sort all that out and upgrade the technology and get some managers in place to run the city a little better. But I just don't know that they've been able to. I don't know if it's a personality conflict or if there's some.
That's highly possible.
It is
I mean,
possible.
They're
Very
both sort of
strong
touchy,
head.
thin-skinned guys,
Sure.
and you can see the potential for sparks between those.
I think you
two.
got to have a thick skin, though, to do those jobs that both of those gentlemen are doing, though, don't you think?
I don't know. They
Something,
seem a little
hard
touchy.
head or something.
All right, and we are going to be talking to Mike Duggan next week. So next Thursday, have your Thanksgiving dinner and then tune into MiWeek, because we'll be sitting down the entire 30 minutes with
We're
Mike
gonna have
Duggan.
turkey.
That's right. So just a program note.
Put
note
on
for
those
everyone.
expando pants and try to stay away.
It's all about elastic on Thanksgiving. All right, well, let's move forward. It is going to be a jackpot year for media outlets in 2014. Michigan and Arkansas are expected to be the two states with the most political ad money. Big reasons why: governor's race, open Senate seat, and some House seats as well. So we're in the money, huh, Michigan? So 2014.
So Nolan and I don't have to go look for work.
Everybody will be in the money except newspapers and public television.
Well, I think that's across the board, right?
Yeah, you know, if you look at the races in Michigan, these are going to be hugely expensive races. I expect the unions are going to put up a good show. I don't think they have a chance of unseating the governor, but they owe him some payback for a right to work. So they're going to put a little money behind Mark Schauer. But the really expensive race is going to be that Senate race. And if it stays as it is now, looking competitive, you're going to have both sides pouring tons of money. This could be a $40, $50 million race or more when all the money is combined. It may go higher than that. And you've got a couple of congressional races that look like they could be huge spending races.
Over on the west side of the state, right?
Well, right here in the 11th district in Oakland County, Dave Trott's going to put in what it takes to win that seat from Kerry Bent-Violio. And yeah, on the west side, in what's the district?
Justin
Tea Party,
Amash and
Justin.
Justin's no, but the other one.
Heisinger?
No.
What do you think?
Old age, for God's sakes.
What do you think about?
Well, we'll get back. We'll circle back around to that. I want to talk, before we talk about the disgusting amounts of money that's going to be spent in the Senate race, let's talk really quick about the new poll numbers out in the governor's race. Detroit News Poll actually came out 44% for Mr. Snyder over Mr. Schauer, 31%, or it was for you guys, wasn't it?
Well, we just ran it. It was a Deno poll, which was interesting because that's a Democratic polling outfit, and it does look like Snyder is, without really even announcing his candidacy yet, is starting to stretch that lead. You know, they put up a candidate Democrats have put out a candidate that has some challenges.
Does he have challenges?
He does. His biggest challenge is name recognition, right? Yeah. I mean, there's not enough people who know who Mark Schauer is or what he's done. You know, he's from a part of the state where he's not getting a lot of exposure. He's not going to get a lot of exposure until he gets around. You know, he's got a lot of work to do building an identity here in Southeast Michigan where he's got to do extremely well to have any sort of shot at challenging. So, you know, I mean, I think those numbers, they are not great numbers for the governor, but given the challenger, it's probably not.
Yeah, the governor's not over 50%, which I think will encourage some Democrats to spend a little money to see what they can do here. I mean, he's close, but he's not over it yet.
All right, who is spending the money for the Senate race? Where's that $50 million coming from?
A lot of it's going to come from this so-called dark money, unreported contributions to third-party organizations that are not sort of, you know, quote unquote, not affiliated with the candidates, but of course they are. That we won't know who's dumping money into those things, and this is one of the big problems in the system right now, is that you can put as much money in as you want, and you don't have to
without disclosure
to say who you are.
And disclosure is the issue. I don't care how much money you put in; just let us know who's putting the money in, and that's true whether you're a union and on the Democratic side or corporation on the Republican side. Just let us know who put the money in. But you ask who's putting it in. The control of the Senate is going, particularly if the mood of the people stays in this sort of turmoil. Control of the Senate is going to be the huge fight. Next year, and if Michigan looks like it could be that 51st vote, man, every group,
then
every political group is going to put money in here, and I mean, they'll have trouble spending all the money.
And that's a big question for this presidency. You know, if you lose the Senate, I mean, not only do you lose the ability to move your agenda at all, but you also lose the ability to appoint who you want to the courts. And we've got, at least, in my judgment, 2 or 3 other court seats that should open up by 2016. If he doesn't have a majority in the Senate, it makes that much more difficult.
It'll be a repeat of what George Bush looked at in his last 2 years when he lost Congress and basically was irrelevant in terms of the lawmaking process.
All right, and finally tonight, Toronto Mayor Rob Ford and the word selfie. Fortunately, they are not connected. I don't know if you guys saw.
That might be fun.
It would be very interesting, but the continuing saga of this possibly the worst politician I've ever seen in history.
He's getting a lot of airtime. I mean, you know, he doesn't have a name recognition
bowl
problem.
Over the woman in.
This guy was possessed by Chris Farley. I think,
he looks exactly like that guy, doesn't he?
You would think this is like some kind of spoof or a movie.
Yeah,
I wished he was lived here. Don't you?
I don't know.
Are you kidding me? I'm sitting saying, thank goodness it's nowhere in
would it be
Michigan.
more
How much
fun
fun would that
to cover that than Kilpatrick? I don't know. Which is
I think he's livelier than
outrageous?
Charles Pugh, don't you?
I don't think you can make up that kind of crazy.
I want someone to go back and explain how this guy ended up being mayor in the first place.
Someone voted
He's
for
sort
him.
of a goofy guy, and
They drink in Canada.
yeah, evidently.
All right, and did you see the word of the year from the Oxford Dictionary, selfie?
Let's take one. You
Did
guys.
you
I
take
don't
a selfie?
like.
I got
don't
our
like
phone
that
here.
word.
Have you ever taken a selfie?
I don't
Nolan,
like
post
that
it
word.
on social media?
I have never done that.
Oh no, I'm
doesn't
even
know how to
afraid
work
to
his
see
phone.
what we're
Listen
gonna
here.
pop up
Hell,
here.
I can't even get my camera up. Here, let's take us one.
See?
Selfie.
Look,
So
let's
you
do
gotta
that.
turn it around.
Okay, get in here. Ooh, that's my finger. How the heck? What
Take
the
it.
heck?
Get your thumb out of the way.
I can't. Where is that thumb? Oh, here.
You know what? I
You
can't
put
even
that
let
on the
you
MiWeek
hit
page.
it.
Whose thumb is that?
Right there. Yeah, we'll post that for you on myweek.org. That is the worst selfie I've ever seen. Nolan, you're fired from the selfie
It's
business.
a selfie of my thumb.
I hope that's not a permanent word, because I hope we, again, mature past the point where everyone thinks the best thing they can do is take pictures of themselves
Yes,
and put
the
it on the internet.
generation, look at me. And that's going to do it for us on MyWeek from our Midtown studios. Check us out at myweek.org and on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Business Leaders for Michigan is dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and economic growth. Learn more at businessleadersformichigan.com. Funding is also provided by Delta.